Yeah, so welcome to the session. So I will start and then I'll hand over a minute. So this is a tag team session between me and Carl around the XRM Toolbox, which is, as you can see, there's a sticker there that a lot of us have, which is a tool that has often saved people's asses time and time again of the variety of things that it can do. So the idea of this session is just a little bit of an introduction into what XRM Toolbox is, what the history of it is, and then we'll give you some examples of how to use it, download it, set it up, and some of the tools that's in there. You'll soon learn that there's lots of tools in there. So yes, this is what the session's about today. Because there's two of us and we can tag team it, if one is talking, the other one, no doubt, will be having an eye on chat. So feel free to keep the questions coming and we can answer in text and or by voice, depending on what the question is. So hopefully it's a bit interactive and feel free to put your questions in anytime you want. Oh yeah, I'm looking at my slides, waiting for me realizing that Carl's sharing on a different screen. So that's me on the left. My name is Matt Beard. That's my socials. I'm not going to go into it too much. I work for an ISV called Dataverse, so I see lots of people's systems rather than just my own, which is always an interesting thing to see. And I enjoy the community. I think community is a fantastic thing, and I run London user groups and the Scottish Summit. So that is me.
That's me. I'm Carl Cookson. I work for Capgemini in the UK, and I have quite a few XRM Toolbox tools. Quite involved in the community with Power Platform Virtual Happy Hour, if you want to come along to that, as well as anything else that's going on community-wise. We're both MVPs. Matt got his this year, I think, and I got mine about this time last year. So for various things in the community, but yeah. Right, moving on. So what is the XRM Toolbox? Well, it's a tool set that our good friend Tanguy introduced way back in 2012 that has a group of parts of tools that he's built up over the years. So before that, he was doing these individual tools using the .NET framework, etc., to get at the APIs that are available to you on D365 at the time, or even on premise at the time, probably, that now have evolved to something that you can use with your Dataverse environment. So back in 2008, he was basically releasing these standalone tools. He shared them around with file shares, etc., until he started thinking about this framework. And he's now got 12 awards, so he's been MVP for a lot longer than my kids have been alive. So this man is a bit of a god, really. So he then opens it up to other developers. So he puts this framework out there, and he starts seeing other tools released and being added to that by other people. Most notably was in 2014, Jonas Rapp gave us the FetchXML builder. So if you don't know FetchXML, it's the cornerstone of how a lot of the code we write that's external to D365 talks to the environment and uses it to generate rows, etc., or interact with that API. And it's a standard way of doing that. So he's built that to be able to show you how to create these things in a structured way. Then we start getting, as the tools progress, as technology progresses, he expands this tool into what it is to now. In 2020, when I wrote this slide, it was 225 plugins. I've just checked and there's actually 277. So in the last year, there's been 50 tools added. And these tools are really either one-offs that people needed for a specific thing, or there's something that has contributed an awful lot to the way that we work. You've got simple tools that are documenting things, or you've got complicated tools that are moving data between environments. And this is all built off that foundation of the Microsoft D365 stack, but now obviously because that's been moved into D365 to the Power Platform and to Dataverse, we can start using those tools in the same way. And just to show you, this is the guy that you need to really thank, and please go and follow him on both his Twitter, on his socials, because he really does interact with the community. There's developer forums as well that he's in there if you want to get involved with that. And then you can see that this basically just showing you the number of tools that we've got over time and showing you the depth that we've got up for these tools. So yeah, And that's about it. I'm handing over to Matt now. You're going to take over the screen share, Matt.
Yep, will do. So that is the end of the professional slides that go full screen, and for the rest of it, we're just going to have in and out of real sort of demo sessions with some slides to back us up, because we'll see some fun stuff rather than go through slides instead. So yeah, we you know roughly what XRM Toolbox is, but it's worth, I thought, for the sake of a demo, we'll see how the Friday morning demo gods are playing, and we'll give it a go and see what actually happens with this stuff. So there's a video, there is a link on there. That link can be shared at some point. It's Jonas doing a video about how to do this stuff, but like I say, we figured we'll do it in real time as well. So this is the XRM Toolbox website. As Carl mentions, you can read through it. There's lots of helpful, useful things in here. There's the tools, so you can see there is lots and lots. Obviously, we're not going to go through 277 of them today, but we will pick and choose some of them that we use more than others. And everyone will find there's a different tool that they rely on more than others. It depends on your role, depends on what you're doing. So it's fairly simple, right? Download latest version. That's about it. Let's go and download it. So 14.5 meg file, and that's it. Simple as that. So this is where my PC didn't download it before. So let's see what could go wrong. Oh, there we go. It did. So that's it. I've got a zip file. There's one step here that I would say I have forgotten most of the times I've ever done this. So it's easy when I'm giving a presentation to remind people to do that, which is when you right click on it, you have to go into the properties of it and you have to unblock it. That's because it's essentially unsigned code. So you have to just do these extra little steps for your machine. So we press on that, we apply it, and it's simple as that. I can now export that out. So if I just extract that out into a folder, I've got a folder, and what I normally do if I'm ever set up on a new machine is I tend to bookmark that or pin it down here, because I use it almost, I would say I've used this every day this week at least. Oh, but you can't do at least, can you? But I've used it every day this week. So that's the level of where I am with that. So I can open the tool and I can see what it looks like. So this is the first time opening a brand new fresh install of XRM Toolbox. Now, what I can do in this is that it will open up the store first time. So this is showing you all the tools that you can install if you want to. So for now, just for the purposes of confusing everybody, I can minimize that. And what I want to do first thing is I want to have a connection. So I want to connect to a system of some sort. So I have a little connect button up there. So if I press connect, I've actually got them saved, so you can save these behind the scenes. So if you're using them regularly, you haven't got to log in all the time, and it will securely save them on your machine. But I will do new connection in this case. So if I hit new connection, you get a number of options here. And I had an interesting discussion with somebody yesterday that it's always interesting to see the different routes people take through. Now, I often will always go for that one, which is I find is easier because I work in so many environments, I never know the URLs of them all. They just don't go into my head anymore. This one lets me pick them. Things like the connection wizard or the OAuth one, they will need you to know the URLs, and they're just different routes into authentication. So for ease, I will show this one. So when I click on that, I get this page here, and I want to open the Microsoft login control. Now, if you're on premise, the joy of it is this does work on premise, so you can put all your on-premise details in here. Or I'm Office 365, so I'm online, so I would like to log in there. I'm signing in as me, so that's fine. I would like to display a list because I have lots and I want to be sure I can connect to the right one. And if I want to add some username, passwords, and regions, I can set all these things up in here. But ultimately, I want to get to this point and press login. What this will do now is prompt me up a Windows window login that you would normally see. What are the prerequisites to install this tool? Carl, you're replying to that, or do you want me to take it now? Carl's on. Okay, I will let Carl run with that. So in the meantime, I will log into this. So I'll log into my account, and this is where we see two-factor's going to work or not. Which, let's see what mood it's in this morning. It does work. There we go. Okay, so I can say I've got lots of orgs there. I've got my dev ones and whatever. So that's the one I want. Dataverse Summit demo. So I can give it a name now if I want to save it. So I've already got it saved, but I will save it for a second time just in case. And this is a useful button I often find because you can find that you're working in multiple environments and the screen doesn't really change. So you want to be sure that if you're going to do something, because ultimately a lot of these tools will talk to the data within Dataverse. If you want to be sure that you're doing it in the right environment, because some of the tools used in the wrong way can have problematic consequences. So if you do set environment highlight, you can pick colors. Basically, it's as simple as that, but it's just a subtle enough reminder that the screen will go to a specific color when you're using that connection in a tool. And that's it. So I've now got an active connection. So whatever tool I open will have that active authenticated connection there. So I can open my tool library. No, in fact, I can go to tools there. There you go. So this is now everything that is installed out of the box. So new is there because I've never opened it on this install. And I can go into one of these and I can pick whichever one I want. So, for example, I know one that Carl's going to go through shortly is the FetchXML builder. So if I just click on that, in fact, no, I've got it installed. So that's a nice little thing to go through now.
The ones that are installed are all Tango's tools.
Okay, there we go. So you've got Tango's ones in there. So if I pick on Tango, so the view layout replicator, for example, I click on that, you can now see that I'm in that tool. I've got the name of the connection within the tab at the top, and I've got that bar around the outside. If I want to change that connection within this one, I can press connect and then I can connect to that one. Obviously, I'm connected to the same org, so that is a little irrelevant in this point, but that shows how you can switch between different environments if you need to. And I can close that and carry on. And like I said, the other thing that I want to do is install additional tools. Before I do that, I always find this useful. So this will remember the last connection you had within that tool. So if you're regularly using a tool within a specific connection, you can just make those jumps into those different areas. So finally, if I do open tool library, I jump down here and I can go to FetchXML builder because everyone is going to generally install that, I would say, by the fact that it's had over 500,000 downloads, which is a fairly impressive statistic there. So I can take that and press install. And I've now got that tool. So if I now go back into all my tools, you'll now see that FetchXML builder is there. And I can now use that as I would. A little pop-up box, because it's a new version, I can see what things are in there. So the developers of these tools can share their notes, they can share their bug fixes, because even though this is an open source, an open source thing for a lot of people, there's still bugs in this code. And the joy of being open source is that you often find that other members of the community will help you out with your tools. So you can see, for example, there that Mark Carrington was helping out Jonas and had a couple of contributions within this tool. So whilst tools have this level of ownership, there is a nice community feel of, yeah, this bit would be nice of this, but I don't have time to build it. And someone else will often jump in and decide, yeah, well, I've got time, so I can help you with that. So I can open FetchXML builder, and that's it. So I've now gone from having no XrmToolBox to having it installed on my machine with a connection saved, and I've just downloaded my first tool that wasn't already included in the environment. So that's how to use the tool. I'm going to throw back over to Carl to give you a demo of this tool and a couple others, and then we're going to sort of flip-flop between some demos of tools, just to give you an idea of where we're going with this stuff in case you're curious. So yeah, we'll give some in-depth demos of the more popular tools. We're then going to sort of chat back and forth about some of the other tools that deserve notable mentions, and then open the floor for a discussion and see where we go. So with that, Carl, I can go over to you.
Yeah, and I feel quite honoured, really, because Jonas is on here. I'm going to mess it up, so please forgive me, Jonas, if I do mess it up, and don't give it the worth that it's there and capable of. But what we've done is effectively looked at the top rated tools. So these are the tools that on FetchXML Builder, if you sort by ratings, come up at the top. The top one being FetchXML Builder, second one being Ribbon Workbench. Mark Harrington's SQL for CDS, which will be Matt to show us. And then we've got the plugin registration tool, and that's just to make a start and to see. But you'll understand why FetchXML gets up there. First of all, it's quite old, like I've already said, and it's been around a bit, so therefore people do rate it. But second of all, it gives you, as a developer, even as a Power Automate developer, a handy tool to work out the structure of your data and query it without going through the normal pain. So I've just opened up a blank FetchXML, And what we've got on this here is the query that I'm going to build with a very nice selection criteria here, as well as this results view. So I can choose an entity quite easily, and I'm just going to choose account. These are I've already connected to my system, and out of the box system, and you can see here all the tables that are available to us to look at. So this is everything that's in your system, and remember, this is everything, including all the bits and pieces that you probably wouldn't normally know about or link to. There's all the bits and pieces that you use for configuration, which helps out tremendously if you're doing things that are quite bespoke to you or distinct to you. And if I just do that, then it will just basically give me a full-blown list of everything, all the fields that are on the account and all the records. It's stopped me. I've got this top 50, which usually I leave in because tend to do something silly, and therefore it stops me from querying the database and really hammering the resources. But as you can see, we've got everything in here that's available to us. And here we can also just add a filter. So that this is basically just going to add a condition to restrict the records that are coming back. And if I select the city attribute, address one city, and then do the equals, and then quickly do Redmond, because I know the data and the out of the box, you've suddenly got a restricted list. Now, great, brilliant. So yeah, you can query, you can do a lot more to it. You can do conditions, and you can add linked tables, which means you can select all contacts that belong to an account that has the city of Redmond, for instance. So you get that convoluted querying that you would get normally from using the advanced find, and you can do a lot more than that and really get into the intricacies of that, which is fine and great. But what do you do with it after you've done it? Apart from being able to query and quickly query, what you can do is quite easily generate the C# code for it. You can quite easily generate JavaScript code. So you can see over here, I've suddenly got a very simple condition and string that I can copy and paste. The other thing for Dataverse developers and Power Automate developers is the Power Automate parameters, and that's popped up over there on this screen here. So you can then start to see things that you can copy and paste into your select statement for your Power Automate. And this is the killer for me for Power Automate development. These filter queries are cumbersome to write unless you do it every day, which I don't. And can save you a lot of time because you can form your query in this window and copy and paste between the two. Okay. The other thing that you can do on here is you can be more selective, so you can only return account name, and you can choose the columns that you want to come back. You can also do combination of columns, so that if you're doing multiple selects, you can really drive down into exactly how you want that data to come back. So you've got combinations of things. So if I go further, if I change that and do that discussion that I'd already do, let's just change the account contact to entity to account and put in a linked entity, and then and this will show me the relationships. So this is your many to one, which is what Jürgen was talking about earlier, and your one to many. So we can find here the account, if I can find it. Where is it? Where is it? There. Oh, that's primary contact. The other way around, I want. Come on, someone shouted at me. Where is it? No, I've lost it. Go on, Matt, tell me. There should be an account there. There isn't. Oh, is it parent account? Is it parent customer ID? Yeah. See, you see how standardized Microsoft are with its out-of-box fields. That doesn't make any sense to anyone. And we can then use that filter, delete that filter because it doesn't make any sense. But we can then put that and remove that filter. We can put on a filter here for the same city, equals Redmond. Search. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? Well, I'm gonna just bail on that, I think. So the idea, I did this was working yesterday. What have I done wrong, Matt? You're not talking.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm there. I'm not sure off the top of my head. One of the things that is worth adding that I don't know if you want to get onto in a minute is that FetchXML built from scratch, as you can see here, can be a little bit confusing. Now, one of the things that you can do is that if you've got views saved in your Dataverse system already, you can import those. So you've got a sort of template of where you're starting on those. So if you're using the UI of the advanced find to save a view, then you can open that and then use that as a starting template, which I often find is very helpful.
Yeah, and it depends on which way you're coming at it, really. That's great for if you're starting in that view and coming this way, but it depends on which way you're looking at it. I always tend to work here. Well, I always tend to work in SQL for CDS at the moment because my brain works that way. But if you want to understand the implications of and the structures of your data, this is one of the ones that we want to really highlight. Okay, can you just go onto your tool before I get SQL Toolbox up, Matt?
Yeah, can do. Okay, so I will switch on. So what I'm going to talk about. So I came from a background of Dynamics CRM 2011, and even more than that, I was on premise, which means I had access to the SQL backend, which was a wonderful, joyous thing. Obviously, moving online, you lose those things. Yes, there is options out there, which is a cheap plug for a session that I'm on tomorrow at 1 o'clock, which is all to do with querying data externally. And the idea is that I would like to query data. I mean, FetchXML Builder there, you can see there was a way of querying data. But as you can see, FetchXML is a pain. It is still a learning curve for everybody. It's a language that I don't think I've ever seen used anywhere else outside of Dataverse platform. So what I prefer is I always use this tool. This is my go-to tool. This is a tool that I have used. I have been fortunate to use for a time before it was released publicly. The author of this, Mark Carrington, who I think I at least saw before in the attendees, I've worked with for nearly a decade at this point. So this was something that he's built. This is his baby, and it, for me, has changed the way I can work in Dataverse. It's as simple as that. Because I come from I have a better understanding of SQL. Give me a request, I'm better at writing a SQL command than I am writing it in a FetchXML command. However, if I want to do those things and apply those things to other people in the system, they need to be FetchXML because that's what the system understands. So this is basically magic that makes you write SQL, but actually convert it to something more relevant. So you can see here now I'm in the same connection. I'm in SQL for CDS tool. I don't know if it's been mentioned. If you don't know, you'll see the phrase in CDS in a few places. CDS is another remnant of Microsoft's habit to change names of products that are well developed. So CDS was the Common Data Service. It was temporarily a new name for about a week, and then it became Dataverse. So if this tool was made today, it would probably be called SQL for Dataverse, in the same way that I think XRM Toolbox would be the Dataverse Toolbox. But everyone's too far down the rabbit hole to change those names. So it's a useful way of remembering where we came from. So now within this, I can expand my entities. And if you're familiar with SSMS or SQL Server or any of those things, then this will hopefully look a bit more familiar to you. So I can start sort of navigating through my metadata this way, and I can get ideas of what I'm doing. And I can write a new query, and I can do something as simple as I know caps don't matter, but I'm a perfectionist on those things. So that's it. I've done a select statement. Now, that is top 10 star from contact. If you don't know SQL, this tool will also seem a bit of a learning curve, so I'll apologize for that. But what I can do is I can do that, and what that has actually done behind the scenes in this instance, check, yes, is that's actually converted that command to something else behind the scenes that is supported, and then lets you bring the data back. So even though you feel like you've written SQL and you've executed SQL, actually this tool has done some very, very clever stuff and not let you do that. So if I jump into the messages on that, in fact, where's my execution plan gone? Where can I not see that? It's up there, running into up there. Oh, okay, fine, I'll do that instead. So what I can now do is that I can do that. So I can now press that button that shows my execution plan. Again, it takes lots of its theories from SSMS. And you can see that that's actually become an XML command. And if I click on that, that is actually the XML that is the exact same thing as this. Miguel, good question. Hold on to that a second. So now I can go further than that. So, I mean, that's simple select star from. I can start doing stuff like that. So that select some data from those things. Again, Jürgen mentioned earlier, if you were in Jürgen's sessions, about things like currency and has currency base. So because the system knows that I'm logged in as me, and I've selected a currency field, it's given the currency and the thing that I care about. If you were in different currencies, all those conversions and all those things that you like within the Dataverse, and that Dataverse is actually pretty good for, this will all adhere to that. And then I can go even more complex than that. So I can start doing analysis. So I can see that. So what that's doing is that's taking all my phone calls and that's going to group them by state. And I can say state code name and gives me counts of what they're doing. Dataverse behind the scenes uses option set values. No, not option set values. Choice values behind the scenes. So there is a text, a numeric value. There is also a text equivalent of that. So I could switch that to be that to make a bit more sense. And if I run that, you can now see that I've got 2,500 almost open phone calls and 1 completed phone call. And now I know I've got all those data. For me, if somebody came to me and asked me for a request that said, can you please show me quickly all the contacts in a system that do not have an open phone call? So that is somebody in my system that I'm going to forget about because no one within my organization is going to be reminded to give them a call. I can write that as a SQL statement because I understand that. So that is an unformatted statement. There we go. So that's give me some details from the contact, but do me a join to my phone calls where the phone call is linked to the contact and it's open. And then I can say where that's null. So because that's an outer join, let's not leave it from any ambiguity. That is now going to return me them, and that should hopefully return me a single record. If I was to go and view that record in the system, then I could confirm that. And in fact, I might as well do that because if I copy that contact ID and then jump into this system, which is the same system, what I should do if I just change this, which is the ID into there, you should now see that within the activities of this one, there is a phone call, but it's closed. So there is no active phone call on this. So that confirms the data that I've seen there. Now, there is a thing, and again, I'm not going to deep dive too far into this, is that there is a thing called the TDS endpoint. If you do want to know more on things like the TDS endpoint, come to this session tomorrow. It's much more in depth. It's designed for that. And that is basically an actual SQL server that you can run actual SQL on to get these same sort of commands. The problem with those things is that you can only do select. When you're doing SSMS and proper SQL, you've got the updates and you've got deletes. And as Miguel was sort of alluding to within the chat there, that people do want to do that. If you had a Dataverse system and you wanted to update something where something else, that's always been historically quite difficult to do. You often rely on another tool or XRM Toolbox, and even then it's been a little bit difficult to do. So instead I can do something nice and simple now. So I can do that. So now I've got, let me just clear it on my selects just so you can see it all. So that's now saying update the contact, set the total spend last 12 months to be 150. Where contact ID is that? That's it. So again, that looks like a SQL. That is fully syntactically like a SQL is. However, what that's doing behind the scenes is that's going to do some clever query expressions and update expressions and do the Dataverse SDK in a proper way and run that through. So that's going to now affect that contact, and that will do yes, that'll do an update of that one contact. And if I then go to contact, I'll see that that is 150. So you can see that's doing the things there. And even more than that, you can then get clever again now. So you could do that. You could do something like update contact, set the last 12 months. I mean, you're not really going to do this in a system, so humour me with the ridiculousness of what this request actually is. So update and set the last 12 months is 150 word last name like N. So it begins with an N, simple as that. You would run that. It's going to calculate as 42 contacts going to be addressed, and then you do that. And it will update as 42 contacts, and they're done now. So that's a nice way of doing that. And then on top of that, exactly the same idea. Are you sure you want to do that? It's going to delete that contact. Now, because this is not running SQL, this is not manipulating the SQL database behind the scenes, which is what used to happen. Because this is, if you used to do on-premise stuff, you could do this on-premise. It was heavily unsupported. Microsoft would tell you off left, right, and center for doing anything like that. Because this is not doing that, this is converting it to the proper SDK. If you've got plugins, if you've got things reliant on those data, if you've got things that fire off and processes in place, that all will still trigger as you would expect. So everything that you see here, whilst it looks unsupported, and honestly, when the first few times you do it, it feels unnatural because we're so used to not having to do it. It changes everything. Having this new ability to do this stuff changes everything. And the final thing that's worth adding in this, and I think this is a great underused feature of this tool, is that I can actually start doing this stuff as well. So if I want to start querying my metadata, I can do that. So it treats the metadata itself like an entity. So if I want to do actual analysis on the structure of my data, and let's say I'm checking certain things, so I want to know the behind the scenes things that are very, very hard to find out within your system. So for example, the account entity, did you know that this one can create views? Yes, it can. That means somewhere, because there's a boolean, there's probably an entity in there where you can't do that. And you can really start getting into the guts of Dataverse, and you can see how some of the stuff is there that's very, very clever. And will the TDS support update delete today? No, it won't, Jonas. I think TDS will, maybe one day. TDS right now, from what I believe, is a copy of the database, I think, or it's doing a similar sort of translation than SQL CDS is. And there you go, Mark's answered that one. And Joe said, if you make changes to data with SQL CDS, are there any changes captured in any audit log files? Again, because this is going through the C# SDK, yes, assuming your entity is audited, if you're assuming you've got audit history, you'll see all those things. And it will be actioned as the user that you are connected into this SQL CDS as. So you've got all that accountability then. You can see down there, it's as that user. Because I'm admin, I can also impersonate and potentially look at it as somebody else. Yes, so there is on that. There is a few other things on there. I mean, do I need to go through those? I'm not going to go for them now, just for the purposes of there is some preventions in there. So, I mean, you don't want to do delete without aware, right? Delete from contact is just disastrous. So you can turn those warnings on. And yeah, this, if you come from a SQL background, this can change your life, quite honestly. I know it sounds overly dramatic, but I don't believe it is. And then another one I'm going to talk about just while I'm here, and again, it's Devi one, but it's useful. I don't have it installed, so it's a nice example of where I'm going for this. Is because I'm a developer, I write plugins. So for plugins, I need a thing called the plugin registration tool. Now, this is available from Microsoft, and you can get it into your system. You can have it on your desktop. But because I have all my connections saved within XRM Toolbox, and because I use it all day, every day, I actually find it easier to have it within the tool. So I can now take plugin registration tool and I can install that. So this is a community created copy essentially of the same open source code for plugin registration. So if you're familiar with plugin registration tool, then it's essentially the exact same thing. So it just is a central point now for me to work. It means everything I want to do can be done within the XRM Toolbox. So, I mean, I have no custom plugins in this, but you can see the Microsoft plugins are in here. So if you're familiar with plugin registration tool, I appreciate people that new to Dataverse will not be. Then this is a very useful tool to have. Do you want to go to Ribbon Workbench, Carl, or do you want to skip past it?
No, I can do Ribbon Workbench. That's fine.
Okay.
Let me share my screen again. So before we had PowerFX commands, what we used to do was we rely on a tool by Scott Duro called the Ribbon Workbench, and we still do need to do that because of the the PowerFX commanding will only allow you to do new fields, so add new buttons to it and condition it. So far, I know that's going to be changing soon, but how long soon is, who knows. So in essence, if you wanted to hide one of these actions, depending on certain conditions, or just remove it all together, things like this merge button, there's a lot of them that will disappear because of security and provisions for that. There's a lot of them that Microsoft insists that are good for us, and therefore we need to see. But it's up to you, right? So if you decide that you don't want to see that merge button, for example, or only certain users want to see that merge button, how do you remove it easily and straightforward? I say easily, because it even though it's an XRM tool, it can be quite convoluted. So Ribbon Workbench, I've already opened the solution because that takes a while, but you have a very simple solution with one table in it generally, and it then will open that solution and allow you to see everything that's going on within that ribbon. So this should effectively show you what is the equivalent of here. So if we look at this merge button, you can actually add a display rule to that to remove it in certain conditions. So if I add a display rule here and add a step, I can do it for an entity privilege, which means that I can, if I give my system administrators or a specific role something more than just edit on the account, so I maybe have a special table with a special and only give permissions to certain users for that, I can add that to here to allow me to effectively hide that. So if I wanted that to say only those people that have got delete access to the account entity, see how it's still entity, then we would hide that button, which would allow you to do a lot more things and be a lot more specific about who sees what buttons. And a lot of organizations and want to only limit the interface to things that users want to do. They may have a process that is an expansion on the out of the box, such as like the sharing, when you share a record with individuals. You may want that to happen and still have all the out of the box goodness that Microsoft give you, but you maybe want to put a bit of logic in the front of that to log it, for example. Therefore, you would hide the standard share button and interact with a new button that you create. So what this allows you to do is to hide that existing button. You can add new buttons. You can effectively go through and define what your ribbon looks like, and then publish that solution, include it within your ALM process, and get that into production. It does take a while to drive that through and understand and build the XML. It's actually building an XML in the background, which has got all the bits and bobs that define your structure in it. So I'm not going to demonstrate it, but just to show you, if you're working in a Dataverse world, even if it's not the out-of-the-box application, you will have all these extra bits that you may want to hide, and PowerFX doesn't give you that full impact yet. I'm sure it will come in time. Okay, so that's the top four tools, and Matt, you wanted to drive through a couple more of Mr. Rapp's tools. You can see that Mr. Rapp and Tanguy are really quite high in our list of people that we admire and want to support here. So let's quickly run through those, Matt. maybe list a few off because of time.
Yep, I will do. Bippin, I'm not sure we'll have time to go through those, how to show how advanced finds. I think there's a bunch of stuff from Scott's session. I'm sure Scott's got videos. Scott is the author of Rhythm Workbench that might help you do that. So just if I fear for time and what we've got left, we won't have time to show you that today, I'm afraid. So I'm going. Where's my slide deck gone? Let me share it. This is where I'm going to go and fresh on, not go full slide deck because I'll forget. We'll get. There we go. In fact, I can go full slide deck. Why not? That's gone well, hasn't it? Right, let's leave it. So now, yes, the custom API custom action tester is very useful. So if you've ever used custom actions, I use it a lot. It's a fantastic tool. That's actually two tools that do two very subtly different things that ultimately result down to the same thing. So you can have a custom message that can get custom code. If you know what custom action, custom APIs are, then I suggest you use that tool. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then I wouldn't worry about it, and I'm not going to go too much into it now again for fear of I've given too much information in one go. And plugin trace viewer, again, for me as a developer, is this idea that I can put all sorts of tracing within my code and I can view it. And the login of that within the system is all right, but to view those results has always been very hard, and to view the pipelines of your code has been very hard. So you can see that Jonas's history as a developer there has really, he's used his experience there to make plugin trace view and really show you within detail what it can do. So plugin trace view, custom API testers, if you are a developer and doing those areas, those are two ones I would highly suggest you use.
Okay. For me, the next one, Iconator, every time you create an entity and you put it on your left-hand side, you get that little jigsaw piece, and it's a boon. It's really something that annoys me that as consultants we forget about the user interface. So Iconator solves that problem. It allows you to upload a little image and put it against the entity very, very easily and very quickly, easier than going through the steps in the classic interface, etc., uploading it to the web resources and all the rest of it. So it really is a lifesaver and something you really should be using very often and all the time. The one that I was introduced, I knew about before I joined Capgemini, but the CDS data migrator, notice that it's CDS. That's one is effectively when you're moving data between systems, it creates JSON files for you that are effectively exports of your data between systems. They're great for doing the soft data between the metadata that you're creating, just to ensure that when you're creating a new system, you've got all the reference data that you need as you move between them. It can be overturned by ALM processes now. We automate a lot of that stuff when we create environments and that sort of thing, but it's still a bit more forgiving and a bit more user-friendly than ALM tooling.
And then, yeah, some of the other ones just are useful there. So View-like Replicator, again, I'm a man of OCD, so I like to have specific views in specific areas. So this just makes my life easier and fills in the gaps from the Microsoft platform. And then metadata browser and user settings utility, again, they're useful things that they're the sort of tools that you find you wish knew existed after you've done the hard thing. So user settings and metadata browsers let you dig into your stuff, so it's worth playing with them. Now, something that we should have spoke about, actually, I've only just thought about, and the question there that's made me think about it is about advice on how to go through the available plugins and see what's useful. Is Lynn, I'm going to butcher his name, I'm going to get his name wrong. Lynn, I'll go with his first name, has done a series of, basically he's gone through every single XRM tool and talk about what it does and how it does it. So if in a minute when I'm not sharing the screen, I can dig in and find that link. He has gone through literally every single tool. I don't know if he's finished yet. I know he's working through them.
No. He hasn't got to mine yet. Okay.
So it's a fantastic series going through. So, but yes, Eduardo, that's a nice little point. If more downloads is more useful, mostly. There's some new tools that very quickly need to jump up the chain. And then if there's interest at the time, which to be honest, there might not be, so we can have a chat and we can demo if we need to. Some of Carl's tools, if Carl wants to talk about what his tools do in case they sound good to anybody.
Yeah, I guess so. Let me just share my screen now. So this is just quickly. ERD, so entity relationship diagrams, is one of the other things that we tend to do as consultants quite regularly at the end of projects and get forgotten about. And what I've done here is basically allowed you to select any table within your organization, and it adds it to a little list here, and then it will create the mock-up of the relationships between them. So if I create a video now, and my dog's barking, you're gonna have to jump onto it, Matt. Sorry.
Yes, fine. Go on. So I'm just gonna paste the thing in there. I'm gonna temporarily mute Carl. Right, I've just put a link in there for Lynn's blog. By the way, it's a really useful area to go into. So now Carl's gone, I'm going to utilize that chance to plug my own stuff instead of his. Is that evil? Probably. So now what you can see in here, so these are the tools that I've got. This is the newest one. This is the one that has had a lot of downloads and has been useful recently. And its simplest idea is that there is a question here actually about Web API. And you often find that recently Microsoft have been making things you can do in Web API that you can't do in the SDK, or you can't easily do within C# and is a little bit more undocumented. So I made a tool that lets you change data types. So you can see here, website URL is a URL, and you've never been able to change that before. It's always been stuck to URL. And these data types, I think Jürgen might have alluded to it on the session before if you were in it, is it will change the way that the UI will render that field on the screen. So in this case, I want URL. Now the tool that I have is the Dataverse format changer. And what this lets you do is it lets you take one of those formats and change it to something else. So it's just going to load the cache in. Now this is punishment for stealing Carl's thunder. There we go. So now I'm going to go into accounts. It's going to show my account fields, and you can see down here that website URL is a URL, but I can now change that to just be text. So historically, something you've never been able to do before, and I'd like to do that, process those changes, and that's now put that through. That's very useful if you're trying to make a UI in the same way, and you've made a mistake where historically you could never ever undo that before. So that's going to process that request through, and in a minute, once that's gone through, that URL will be text if I was to refresh my UI. So it's just a nice way of, again, making your data in line. And this is probably my newest tool, and it's the one that recently has been useful for me, and I've heard from a few other people that it's helped them out with what they're doing. So that's my favorite tool of my own build. There you go. You can notice that's changed. So where you've always not been able to do it before, you now can. So that's mine. And Carl, I'll throw it back over to you for ERD. I muted you, by the way.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've just realised I've just rebuilt my machine at home, and I haven't got Visual Studio. So anyway, so let me share my screen again. Not Visual Studio, Visio. I haven't got Visual Studio on the machine. So what I was basically describing was that you create a Visio diagram of all your entities, tables, and what it's included in the relationships between the two, which basically gives you a bird's eye view of everything you are deploying to a customer generally. And it's one of those documents that we're asked all the time for as consultants. The other one of mine that we've got on the list is particularly for Flow. So you've got the Flow version of that. So if I go to Flow to Visio Builder, I can look at all the flows that are in my organization, my Power Automates, whatever you want to call it. They're still flows within Power Automate. So it will be able to document that flow. And again, I can't show you that because I haven't got Visio installed. I really shouldn't have reinstalled my computer yesterday, should I? But this basically gives you the same view. It gives you the option to select a flow, and that converts it into a Visio diagram, great for documentation, and effectively allows you to see it and give you the detail of it, and give you a point in time. what you've delivered to a customer. It goes through all the hierarchy and displays it all for you. What else is on there? The other one that my tools tend to be some ones that I've done that are documentation, because that's what I tend to work with all the time and have to do. And the other one here is to document security roles. So in a Dataverse world, you can basically look at all the roles that you've got, and effectively say, right, okay, I want to look at the sales user role, sales team member, and it will show you all the entities that it's got available to it and what condition they're in, whether it can create, read, write, delete, etc. And also all the miscellaneous privileges. And when I hit export here, I'll be getting to an Excel file again to give me a snapshot in time. And I need to fix that so it actually opens Excel. But anyway, and yeah, and that's we're nearly at time. You've done your tools, have you, Matt?
Yeah, I stole your thunder when your doorbell went.
The dog started barking. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
The final one for me and is the Mockaroo Data Munger. Munging data is a passion of mine, and as in, if you're setting up a new demo system, you always need a lot of demo data. So be able to create lots of contacts, lots of opportunities, lots of open and closed opportunities or open and closed cases to allow you to do to get at a nice look and feel for all the graphs that you've got to put up for your BI or your AI tools. So the Munger allows you to go over to Mockaroo, which is an API that is open, it is free to use if you register an account, which allows you to drag in data of all different conditions and bring that into your environment via the Xrm Toolbox and therefore the APIs. So that's just a way of bringing those things in. So if you're building lots of demonstration systems like we do as consultants and pre-sales, then it's easy to get out of those data sets. Anything else, Matt?
No, so for me, I can see that Chris has his hand up, but I know there's things that are not able to speak with his mic because I think they're disabled for the day. Raz, don't know if I can just let Chris talk if he has got a question.
Which Chris?
Thank you. Yes, we've just unmuted Chris.
Chris, if you've got a question, or if it's an accidental hand, that's also fine. We know they happen on these calls all the time, so feel free to speak up.
Yeah, Jonas has put his tool in the, and this is what you get for not knowing the history of the tools and not doing enough Googling. I should have, back in the day, created an add-on and done an extension of Jonas's tool, but I didn't know about it until I've done mine, and Jonas nags me that I've should have used his.
You stole his thunder.
Stole his thunder, yeah. But I prefer Visio over at UML, so there you go.
So yeah, I mean, the ultimate sum up is, and I think actually chat is sort of alluding to it, is that there is so much there that it is very hard to know what's in there. 277 is a lot, and nobody knows what they all are. I mean, I'm going to take a punt that by the time Lynn gets to number 277, he's forgot what number 1 was again. And that's the point of community, right? I mean, if you've got requests that if you want to know what a tool does, if you put it on LinkedIn, if you put it on Twitter, if you put it somewhere where there is this element of community, then somebody's either going to go, yeah, try this one, or someone's going to go, no, but I can see there's a very good use case for it, and I would take a punt that within a week or two that somebody's going to probably have built it somewhere. For example, Jürgen again spoke about polymorphic relationships yesterday, which is this idea of you can have a relationship that links from account to contact or lead, for example. They are supported now behind the scenes, but Microsoft doesn't yet have a user interface that can build that yet. So Tanguy decided to bridge that gap, and he built the UI that builds them for it. And that's often what XrmToolBox has been, is a quicker way, because let's be honest, writing this code ourselves means we've got less things we've got to check to roll it out, whereas for Microsoft to build these things, they've got much more rigid structures in place to release them, and it affects a lot more people. So yeah, I would use social media, use people ask questions, spread around, and again, like Carsten said there, It's 10% of the iceberg compared to what we've done. And we spoke for an hour, and I'm already limiting myself on what I need to say, because I could do a full day's worth of sessions on useful XRM Toolbox tools.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that they are open source. They are developed with the best intentions, but don't expect reactions if things break and are not working. We've all got day jobs. These are all tools that we do outside of that, and therefore they are the same as any other community tool, that you don't expect things to jump and to get resolved. It will get resolved more than likely if the developer decides that is the right way of doing it. But there has been times where they're open source, therefore do a pull request, get out there and do it yourself if you can. There's plenty of documentation on the XRM Toolbox site how to get going. There's lots of code available for you to copy and paste, and what I do tend to do is go and look at Jonas's tools and steal all his bits and pieces and put them in, and things like that. So there's plenty of ways of learning, and if you fancy learning C#, then that's probably a great step into the way of doing it. But yeah, any other questions?
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Matt and Carl. I have to say, the XRM Toolbox is one interesting statistic that I would love to see is how much actual project time has actually saved all the projects, simultaneous projects across the globe. That'd be an interesting statistic, how much actual cost saving and time it saved projects, and based on how often it's being used. I think Jonas has some statistics on the numbers of usage. There were some metrics flying around earlier, but all I can say, guys, is thank you once again for sharing and maintaining the XRM Toolbox, and keeping it alive. At one period, I believe my plugins got deprecated. I didn't maintain the code, so it is something you have to maintain. And kudos to you all, and Jonas and everyone, all the XRM Toolbox authors who are keeping the XRM Toolbox alive, keeping the code base quality alive. I know Jonas is also and Tanguy trying to maintain better code quality. And so from my experience, and I'm sure for most of everyone's, is that we've only got nothing but positive experience with the XRM Toolbox, and it's only saved us countless number of hours when it comes to delivering these projects. So I just wanted to ask Carl and Matt, do you have any announcements or final comments you'd like to make?
I'm all good. I'm hoping to get comments within the Flow documentator this weekend, because that's a new thing that's just come out, and so hopefully that will do. But yeah, no, all good for me. Apart from that,
no. The one thing I would say is if you use a tool and you like a tool and it saved you and it's been good for you, find out who made it. Just send them a Twitter message, send them a LinkedIn message, because it takes seconds, but it's useful to know that the time you spent building those things is not in vain for anybody. I mean, I've just looked now, and like what I said about usage, SQL for CDS alone over the last 90 days has ran 5 million unique queries, which, I mean, that's ridiculous in 90 days. So that's the one thing I would take away from that, is if it saved your ass, like we go back to that first slide, at any time ever, tell the author of that, because it's always nice for them to know that.
and there's also most of the tools. I know XRM Toolbox has, which goes to Tanguy, but most of the tools have a donate link as well within the help section. So if you want to just give £1 or €1 or whatever to those guys, that will be really appreciated, because they do this for nothing. And feedback, right? It's got to be there's GitHub links, etc. So make sure you're feeding back any issues to them so they can improve them.
Yeah. And
right,
thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you both. Thank you, Carl and Matt, for doing this tag team on the XRM Toolbox, the most important tool for your Dataverse administration. So that was Carl and Matt. Big thank you once again for maintaining the XRM Toolbox. as well as Tanguy and all the other authors. I know there's some other authors online today. So without them, obviously these tools would not exist, which would obviously complicate your projects and could potentially increase the costs and potential challenges. So thank you once again. Okay, we're now on to our next session, and this session is on licensing.